All right.
Okay.
So, the first thing that I was interested in talking about is just the grading policies and how you figure out what's going into the grade and how large of a portion that's going to end up being.
Yeah, that's something that I kind of struggle with in a performance-oriented class. I think most people, and I think, a lot of times I talk to like student teachers, well, our grade was just, participation. That was our grade. Every now and then we play some scales or whatever. So, and it does become difficult if you have a class that has a big, heavy performance schedule. But I try to balance it out. I actually have four grading categories, I think. And I have class participation, which my principal doesn't think is a category. So she's told us all that class participation is not a category. So try to rename that like rehearsal technique or something like that, because that's a skill that we teach. And I do have a rubric kind of thing for that I share with students. I do try, and I always kind of fail at this, is to have some kind of written component to the class, whether that is having them, especially the junior high level. I know this is secondary class, but the junior high level do like rhythm counting worksheets or fingering worksheets or things like that. Yeah. But when you get to the high school level, what do you really do? And they don't need to do fingering worksheets. They don't really need to do rhythm counting worksheets, although some of them do. Whenever we get to 6-8, we do a lot of that because that seems to give them trouble. Yeah. Lately, what I've started doing is just in the last couple weeks, I have kind of a composition overview worksheet, and it just has things like, who is the composer or arranger of this piece? What's the title of this piece? Does it have a subtitle? What's the opening time signature? Are there any time signature changes in this piece? Write down time signature changes, key signature changes, things like that. Yeah. So we do that, and then we have the performance component and the playing test component. So I try to balance those out, and I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I think that performances are like 30% of the grade. I think playing tests are like 20. I could have that wrong. And then class participation is like 15, and written work is 20. I don't think that adds up to 100. But between those 5 categories or whatever, how many I came up with, I do kind of balance it out so that performing is still most important. Yeah. But over the years, I've had principals that said, well, if they miss a performance, and there's only one performance a quarter if it's like choir, well, they can never come back from that, so you got to balance that out. Well, that's really the most important thing we do. Yeah. Is performing, really, and everything else that we're doing is working towards that. So, yeah, that's been an issue. So I've kind of revamped it and gone back and decided how much I want to give to each performance. Like right now we're doing basketball pep band. It is a basketball game where we play the same 8 or 10 tunes 10 times, worth as much as a organizational contest performance, for example. So I kind of balance those out because I do weighted categories, and so like I might give a concert would be worth 100 points, but a pep band might be like 30 points. Yeah. But they all go into a performance category, and that's worth like 30% or 35% of their grade. So I try to balance it out, and I tell them in the syllabus, which I pass out, you're going to have to describe or explain music somehow. And that is talking about the piece that we're playing or showing me that you know how to write a scale, recognizing key signatures. So, but when you're going outside and working on a halftime show, and when you're trying to get concert music, it's hard to get that done in there. So I always, every year, think I'm going to do that, but I'm still working on it.
So for your playing exams, is that in person or is that like a video type of thing?
At the high school level, we have gone to recorded tests, and we've done it a couple different ways. This year we started using Google Classroom for that. For a while, I was using a course manager called Edmodo for a while, which is kind of like Western Online. I would give them an assignment, they would record it, they would attach it. Yeah. And some people had problems with that, and so then I was getting stuff by email, and so right now the Google Classroom seems to be working pretty well. So, and it's pretty slick because I think actually they get an assignment and it actually says on their phone, it's like record an assignment now.
Wow.
And like they can just hit it and it uses their camera and their microphone on their device, and so it just records it. And so we do that, and those can be either just basic skills like out of a technique book, or it could be excerpts from a piece of music we're playing.
And then do they have a rubric or something beforehand?
I do have a rubric, and it's pretty consistent. They've been using it since they were in 6th grade, so
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
the same thing for them. It's a little bit different for my, I'm talking about band, although I also teach choir and guitar. It's a little bit different for them. In guitar class, that's a one-on-one
Yeah.
usually. And my guitar classes are pretty small. My largest one right now has 12 students in it, so it's a one-on-one. And it's also a little bit of a private lesson time, because I'll see them doing something with their fingers that they need to fix, or they're getting a bad sound that I can't hear in the whole group. So that's one thing that's nice about doing an individual lesson, whether it's in class or not, is that you can say, here's a little something that you can do. For the choir class, we do all of our singing tests together at the same time. And so they do the same thing. They bring their phone to class, or we have a digital recorder in class, and the whole class sings at the same time, and it just records their voice. And I've tried that in band, it just doesn't work.
Picking up everything.
It just doesn't. You put your phone on your music stand, and no, it's not picking you up. It's picking up everybody within a 10-foot radius around you. So yeah, and I do use a grading rubric, and it's got 5 categories, and there's 20 points per category. And recently I started doing a pretty neat thing in Google Classroom where you can actually grade it, and it sends them back a rubric. So like my rubric shows up and it's highlighted what grade they got, and it has their recording. And you can even type comments, and you can record comments while they're playing. I can record a comment. It's pretty cool. I haven't done all that yet, but it's pretty neat.
So you started to talk about like a guitar ensemble. Are there any other like non-band, orchestra, choir, jazz?
That's all we have right now. We don't even have a jazz program really, but all of our groups right now are just meet during the school day. So we have a band, choir, and just this year I started my Guitar 2 class. So I have 2 guitar classes, but they all meet during the school day. We don't have any. We used to have an extracurricular jazz choir that would meet during homeroom, but we restructured our school day, and that's not an option anymore. So every now and then we'll have some just ad hoc ensembles. Like tomorrow, I've got some kids that are playing Christmas carols that have been coming in before school and working on that, but we don't have any other kind of unusual ensembles, I guess. Yeah.
I guess a big one for me that I'm always looking at is how do you balance teaching concepts versus getting ready for the performance that's 2 weeks down the road?
It's funny you should ask. I just had this conversation with my 7th and 8th graders on Thursday. Just had this conversation because, especially with them, I'm working out of a book every day. And I like to spend time in that book every day. And I get frustrated because we don't get very far in that book. And I'll actually have some students say things like, we need to work on our music. And I quoted Abraham Lincoln. You guys all know Abraham Lincoln, right? Yeah, we just went to the Lincoln Museum. I said, well, Abraham Lincoln said, if you gave me 3 hours to cut down a tree, I would spend 2 hours sharpening my axe. What does that mean? I said, it means if you don't have the skills, it's pointless to work on this music. He's saying I'm not going to stand there and just flail away at this tree without having the right tool, or a tool that's not in good shape. So I got to make sure the tool is in good shape first so I can knock down the tree. So I said, if we have the skills in place, the music should come easier. I mean, we're not really using this piece of music to teach skills. We're really learning skills out of the book, and we're applying them to this piece of music. So it does get frustrating at times, and what I will try to do is, if we have a piece of music, we're doing a piece of music right now, it's in G minor. So we hadn't practiced G minor in our book yet, but we had practiced, I think, C minor in our book, and so we played that minor scale in the book, and we flipped ahead about 10 pages, and we played the G minor scale in the book. It sounds the same. They're both natural minor scales. And so we would practice that and a couple exercises that were in that key in their book, and then we would take out the music and say, look, it's in the same key, it's in the same key signature, it has the same sound. So I do try to start my music early enough so it's not we're crammed it all into one the last minute. But yeah, I do tell them we have other things we need to learn, and we don't want you to finish the year saying, well, I learned how to play 6 pieces of music in 8th grade band. That's not really what we want you to learn in 8th grade band. We want you to learn, I learned to play this many keys. I learned to play, these new rhythms in 8th grade band. It's not, I learned how to play 6 pieces of music in 8th grade band. So I try to force myself. Sometimes I think we really need to get to this music, but we still need to remember that we have a curriculum that we want to cover. So sometimes I have to force myself not to spend all that time on the music. And sometimes I tell them too, you guys all play basketball, right? Do you practice basketball, or do you practice your next opponent? Do you say, oh, we're playing Farmington next week, so all week long we're going to focus on playing Farmington. We're gonna imitate their plays and their drills, or do you just practice basketball? And then when the game comes up, you know the skills to play the game. And if we can create those skills, then we can play any piece of music that's at our level. You're not going to go in and play a high school basketball team. You're going to play something that's on your level. But you develop those skills through practice, and then you can play the music, hopefully.
So for your classes, are you required to write lesson plans and submit them, or?
We have gone back and forth on that. We have probably done it 4 different ways in the last 5 years, I think. At one point, we were supposed to turn in our lesson plans every Monday, and then we weren't supposed to anymore. And then we were supposed to turn in our lesson plans digitally using some crazy format that no one understood, and then we stopped doing that. And then we were supposed to type up our lesson plans and share them like in a Google Doc, and then we didn't have to do that anymore. And so we went, I think, a whole semester without doing any lesson plans. And then just this week, we were told we had to turn in lesson plans on Mondays. So yeah, it's been pretty crazy. But we are supposed to turn in lesson plans on Mondays, and every lesson plan is supposed to have a standard attached to it. So we're supposed to say what standard we're addressing in those lessons. Now, not that we get feedback from those. But I guess it's just a way to make sure that everybody has a plan.
Yeah. I'm just curious, do you guys use the state or national NAFME ones?
Well, the ones that are listed now on the ISBE website are the national.
Okay.
More or less. They last year at ILMEC, they rolled out the new standards.
Yeah.
And they're basically what the National Fine Arts Standards are. They just combined like 2 categories into one. So, but they're on the ISBE website now.
So when you're in rehearsals, is there a lot of student discussion going on throughout the rehearsals, or is it a lot more of giving concepts and then trying it out? I'm just curious how you typically.
I like to do a mixture of both. There are some times when I just want, to tell them this is how I want this style to be. But quite often after that, like example, I'll explain a style. This needs to be march style. This needs to be this style. We're playing a piece of music right now called Bobsled Run, and it's supposed to be a little crisper articulation. So we talk about that as a group, and then I'll say, okay, clarinets, play it. Clarinets will play it, and I'll ask somebody else,